Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to your latest episode of the M Squared Power Hour. I am one of your hosts, Mr. Joe Matthews. On the line, as always, we have Mr. Andy Minton.
What's up?
And our super producer, Joey Emmerich. How you doing tonight, man?
What up, what up? I'm doing fantastic. Fantastic.
All right. We have a great show for you. But before I jump into all that, let's pass it over to Mr. Andy so he can go ahead and get through all the social media stuff.
Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at M2_Power Hour. And you can catch us on Facebook at M2.PowerHour. And that's also where you can catch us on YouTube if you have not already, where this is actually being videoed. So you can see all the nonsense and Joe's freezing. But if YouTube's not your thing, you can catch us on any podcast catcher, YouTube, or Apple, Google, Spotify. I think those are the main ones. There's other ones that I've never heard of. So just search M2 Power Hour, and we are still waiting for our first 5-star rating and review.
Yes. Well, we're waiting for our first review, right?
Yes, our first review. I will wrap the entire review. Whatever you put on there, minus cuss words. I will bleep out any cuss words. Please don't put cuss words in the review. Anything else, I'll wrap out the review. Send it to us. But real quick, I got Mr. Andy. I feel like we're like back in like Sunday school with third graders.
Oh, no.
All right, everybody, welcome Mr. Andy.
It's very astute of you, Mr. Joey.
Yeah, I do that stuff with a purpose. If I can make somebody laugh in the first couple seconds, we're good. I miss the South, man. I miss where everybody is Miss Tanya or Mr. Rick or Mr. Andy, Mr. J. Like I miss all that, you know. Regardless of your name, it's Mr. or Miss something.
Yeah.
Oh man. And missing and one thing though I am not missing right now is, even though this is gonna be broadcast sometime Sunday or sometime next week, today's opening day of the baseball season. I've got on my Dodgers shirt. I got a little Hawaiian Dodgers shirt that my father-in-law bought me. I have my Dodgers World Series hat that I actually bought at the World Series in 2017. And man, today's such a great day for all of us. I don't know. Are you guys excited?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'll be more excited tomorrow when the Braves play.
Who do you guys open with?
The Mets.
Mets. Ooh.
Yeah. Soroka versus DeGrom.
Ooh.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Soroka is 2-0 versus DeGrom, by the way.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
very cool.
Well, and for those of you that are catching this, opening day is on Thursday, so that means we are actually recording a day early.
Yes.
And that's because someone has to be a bum and decide to get away from all the technology and go to the mountains.
Yeah, my fault. Dude, you know what though? It's gonna be awesome. It's exciting. I'm taking me and my wife and my daughter. We're taking a lot of kids up to the from our youth group up to a cabin up in Lake Arrowhead. I can't really call it a cabin. It's our uncle's house. It's a beautiful house. But we're gonna go up there and spend a couple days. There's like zero Wi-Fi. If you want to use your cell phone, you basically have to hang off the side of the mountain to get a reception. So it's just gonna be a couple days of board games, hanging out, enjoying each other's company, and just unplugging and getting away from stress, you know, and just bond. So I'm excited. But I am gonna be in the house with 7 teenagers, me and my wife and 7 teenagers. So it's going to be insane. And there's a lot of sugar. There's a big giant stack of sodas and stuff that the kids are bringing. So one of them just said, yeah, in the background. So
wait a minute.
So it's,
you mean there's actually a place in California that has worse Wi-Fi connection than you do?
Yeah, but it happens to be on top of a mountain. Yeah. So, I know my Wi-Fi sucks. So that's why we're trying to hurry up through this episode so it doesn't die again. Um, but one thing I'm looking forward to when we get up there though is just to be with the kids and have a chance to have some one-on-one time with them, or be away from technology and life, so we can just talk and bond and a little of that life mentorship, and have the opportunity to spend time together in that way. So that's it's gonna be a good weekend.
Sounds
Yeah.
like fun.
Yeah.
Well, in talking of mentors, and like that mentorship aspect, today we kind of wanted to dive into that, but we wanted to start by talking about a mentor that I'd say he mentored all three of us men, and he mentored, I don't know how many hundreds, maybe even thousands of people at Johnson.
Yeah.
There's a gentleman by the name of Doc Reese, or Dr. David Reese, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or just Doc.
Just
Or
Doc.
But he passed away this past week, so there's been a lot of just remembering and reminiscing, and it brings up it for me. It's brought up memories, not just like, oh, he was funny or he was a great teacher, but reminded me of mentorship things that he did for me, but also reminded me lessons he taught me. And to me, that's an important thing of a mentor, is when you can sit there and go, hey, this guy or this gal, when I think of them, I'm still learning stuff from memories that I had with them.
Yeah. And I think one thing that stands out to me is not so much of what I knew Doc for, but just his, I want to say, later in life decisions. But anyway, Doc died of cancer, and what I've heard is that he chose to forego treatment, which, if you know Doc, is a very Doc thing to do. Like, he lived his life based on what we know, fully relying on God, and I think making the decision that he did to forego any treatment is evident of that. He knew that he had a time, and he left that in God's hands. Because ultimately, and I don't know about you guys, but I believe that God's got a time for you to go, and there's nothing we can do to change that. And so I think Doc knew that his time was up, and he wanted to, because cancer drugs aren't, they're not fun. We've all had family members, and we know people that have struggled through that, and it's not fun. And I think it's worth it if you come out the other side. But I think if you get to the point where it's not coming out the other side, I think Doc wanted a better quality of life than that, which I really admire.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and with him, I truly believe that he probably felt like, the other side is going to be a lot better than this world anyways, so why why prolong it, and
Yeah.
he was such an amazing person. My second semester at Johnson, I was struggling because I moved from California to Tennessee. I was 30, 30, turning 31 years old. Just life was crazy for me at the time. It was a tough time, and I just remember he called me into his office, and we just talked for probably a good hour and a half, 2 hours, and he just gave me so much confidence in myself, and to be able to complete what I was doing. And I owe a lot of my success at Johnson to the fact that my first year there, he pulled me aside. He saw a student who was struggling, a husband, a father, all this stuff, and he took the time just to sit with me and like, hey man, let's talk, let's work out what you're going through. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. Then he was a guy who every time you saw him, like, hey, what's going on? He knew your family. He knew stuff that you talked to him about. Like, he would recall it and follow up with you on it. And yeah, just an amazing person in general, and funny, and and he marched to a beat of his own drum with the way he taught, with the way he preached, everything. He was a very unique person and loved by everybody. Like, I can't think of anybody who had a bad thing to say about him. Even when I failed one of his classes, I wasn't like, man, Doc failed me. I was like, dang, I'm really embarrassed that I failed Doc's class because, I disappointed Doc.
What class did you fail?
The one that was at 7:30 in the morning. Was it Prophets or?
I took a bunch of Doc classes that early, so.
I'm not a morning person, so. So okay. I took the next time around that was after like 10 a.m.
Gotcha. Okay, so my first introduction to Doc was actually through his wife, because his wife taught Marriage and Family. I think, Joe, me and you had that together.
We did.
And, and that was our first semester at Johnson. We didn't know Doc, but I feel like by the time I got to Doc's class, I knew Doc because of his wife.
Yes.
Who she asked us to call her the Fox in class. So, and that was Doc's name for her.
Yeah. Doc and the Fox.
Sounds like a kid's book.
Right?
Well, and I will say about Doc and his relationship with the Fox, like, he was very open in how much he loved his wife, and was very affectionate and wasn't afraid of people knowing that. Like, to him, he wanted, and to me that was kind of a model. Like, even now that I'm married, I actually try to model some of my marriage after that. Like, seeing how he treated his wife, how much love he had for her. And I don't know about you guys, but even like being in youth ministry, there are some times that you go, do I hold my wife's hand, put my arm around her? Do I just walk next to her? Because I don't know what people in the church will think. But I learned you need to treat your wife special. And she deserves to be showered with affection. So you should be willing to do that. And I'm not talking about like making out with my wife in the middle of the sanctuary on a Sunday morning. But I mean, I'll give my wife a kiss on the lips on a Sunday morning. Just go, oh, I love you. And I've had people talk to me about, like, I had a gentleman, he didn't talk like in a bad way, but he just, we're going to have to get on you kissing people in the middle of church. And I said, it's a holy kiss. It's all good. So.
Right.
But it's my wife. I'm allowed to kiss her.
Right.
But that was something I learned from him. And like what Joe said, him pulling guys aside and girls. But like, he had pulled me aside because we had a big test coming up where we had to memorize, as part of the test, write out word for word a scripture in Isaiah. And I am terrible at big memorization. Like, I can memorize small verses, but if I've got to do something big, I can't do it. Yep. And he caught on to that, called me into his office, had me sit down, and he let me know right off the bat. He said, so I know you struggle with this. And I said, so that means I don't have to memorize the whole thing? He said, oh no, you have to memorize it, and you will memorize it, and you'll get 100% on my test, because here's what you're going to do. And like, he worked with me on how to memorize it, checked on me every day before the test. And then as I'm sitting there, everybody else is done, and there's 10 minutes left in the class to finish this test, and I'm sitting there by myself. And here's Doc Reese standing up in the front of the class going, go, Joey, go, Joey, go, Joey, go. You got this. You got, like, cheering me on like he's a cheerleader, and like
Mhm.
I ended up getting a perfect score on that test. And just that encouragement was something that I really appreciated from Doc.
Yep. Isaiah 53,
Yeah.
Yes.
Suffering servant.
suffering servant.
Oh, I suffered a lot through that.
Hey,
Yeah.
can I tell you about that test? I pulled a Corey on that test. I basically I that's why I failed this class. I looked at it, went answered what I could, turned it in, said have a good day, Doc. Because
Yeah.
I was like, I will see you next semester with this class.
And one other thing before just about Doc and how he talked about his wife, and because I know in student ministry you always get these guys that come in for like a conference or whatever, and they always talk about how hot their wife is and make everybody else in the room uncomfortable. But Doc never did that. You know, like he never. I mean, he talked about how attractive he thought his wife was, but it was never at the point of making everybody else in the room uncomfortable.
Right.
You know, so, and that's one thing that always stood out because, you know, but anyway.
Well, I think
I-
with that though, he talked about his love for his wife.
Right.
And you could tell that he wasn't just like, oh, and I got this sexy woman over here. Like, he might have said that, but that wasn't the focus of what he was saying.
Right.
That was just a part of, like, I love this amazing woman who, has added so much to my life. And by the way, she's beautiful.
Yeah.
I remember one time I was taking, I think it was in Roman. I was taking, I want to say Romans, but I don't think it was because that was an early class. I can't imagine they were doing a tour that early. Maybe they were toward the end of it. But I remember one of my classes with Doc, this girl came in. She was just out of high school with her parents. And Doc went into this spiel where he started about how much he makes love to his wife. And you could just look over, and I mean, their whole family was just super uncomfortable. And he just, and it wasn't, and he, and then he went on to what he was talking about, and he's talking about, when he holds her hand and when he does stuff for her and things like that. Like, it wasn't like a sexual thing, but just the way he said it, it just, and he did stuff like that on purpose all the time.
Yeah.
But just, like his intention was like that shock factor. But he's like, but this is what I really mean. And it's just, those memories are the things that I always have, and the things that endear me to Doc a little bit more.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I think the way he talked about his wife was also just the way in general, like he knew how, like he could say anything, but even if it was like you're an idiot, he said it in a way that you're like, no, I really am. I like it wasn't insulting. You could tell because everything he said with like care. Like he said it because he cared about you.
Right.
So all I can think about is, with all due respect, you're an idiot, but I know that's not what you mean.
Well, I said with all due respect.
Yeah.
There's a big line, but there's a big difference between Ricky Bobby and Doc Reese.
Oh, there's a Grand Canyon of difference between Ricky Bobby and Doc Reese.
Well, and and the thing that he brought out of me more during our time together, we were talking about, I'm pretty sure it was in Romans, in the Romans class I had with him. I think, Joe, you were in that class too.
Mm-hmm.
But he was, we got on the topic of creation, and he mentioned a book, and I can't remember who wrote it, but the title of the book is Genesis 1. And essentially it's a deistic evolutionist look at Genesis 1. And basically that belief is that God created the earth through evolution, which, I mean, I don't think there's enough evidence for that in Scripture, but you know, in reading it, it was a hard read. And he told us, he said, I don't want everybody to read it. He said, but if you choose to read it, he said, I want to know your thoughts. I said, okay. And so I read it, and you know, and we sat down and talked like for 2 hours in his office one day about it. And that got me, you know, just interested in not other beliefs. Like, I don't spend a lot of time talking, you know, learning what different occults believe or anything like that. I mean, I have spent some time getting to know what Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses believe, because I like talking to them when they come knock on my door. And I want to, you know, know what they believe, because they claim to be one of us, if that makes sense. But yeah, just, and what other denominations believe, because I mean, most of my time at Johnson was being another denomination, or theological view than everybody else, and you know, and there are things about that even Doc stands out to me now. But yeah, just wanting to know more about what, you know, different theological beliefs are and what other groups of Christians believe. And that's come out a lot in me, especially later in life, and now, and the things I read, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I'll say one of the cool things to me is that when we think of mentors, like a lot of times you think of someone that's a mentor of somebody, they might be a mentor of like 3 or 4 people. Doc, like we said before, was probably a mentor to hundreds, if not thousands of people.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of professors will mentor students and be there for students, but it's rare to find a professor who has affected on a deeper personal level as many students as Doc has. I mean, there are some out there, but it's rare. And when you have the opportunity to find that, I say eat it up.
Yeah.
Take advantage of it, and not just take advantage of professors that are mentors, but if you have a mentor in your life, take advantage of it. Make sure you're listening to what they've got to say, paying attention. And really, I want to ask you guys, who are your mentors? And I want to clarify for us, and we talked about this off air, we're not talking about role models like men or women we look up to, or men or women we shouldn't look up to. Right. People that are off in a distance that we see what they did and we want to model our jump shot after them, or we want to model how we preach. But mentors are like people that have actually been in our lives that come in and help guide you and build you up to be the Christian man or woman that you are, and to get you ready, some ways even to get you ready specifically for ministry, whatever your ministry is, even if it's volunteer ministry or working in an actual church. Mentor is someone that comes alongside you and prepares you for that. So who are some of your guys' mentors, like godly mentors that you've had in your life?
I'll go first. Okay. 2 of mine that when I hear that word that stand out are 2 pastors that I've been under. The first one I've known a long time, by the man of Dave Thomas. He was I did my internship for Johnson with him, and he's just always been there, and always willing to speak truth into my life. And the other one would be the first pastor that I actually worked under, and is Gene Wood. And it's more of him and his wife, because when we when I first went to the church, when I first went to work at the church, I had Misty, my wife, and I just started dating. No, actually, I was getting ready to propose. I actually think I bought the ring the first Sunday, my first Sunday there, or the weekend before, something like that, and so. And him and his wife just kind of took us under, like, and they're older, like their kids are grown, they're grandparents, and so they had extra time to just pour into us. I remember they invited us over their house a lot, just for game nights and dinner and things like that, and they were just super encouraging, but they were also, willing to be there for us in the hardships of going through ministry as a newly married couple, and as we were going through that, and so that was really awesome. And even now, he's still an important role in my life, and he's somebody that in the process that with me being let go from the church I was at. I called him up and said, "Hey, you gonna get together?" He said, "Yeah, I've got a doctor's appointment. You can drive me. I'll buy you lunch." Okay. So I drove him to his doctor's appointment because he can't drive right now. And so we talked and had lunch. It was a good time, and just his willingness to spend that time with me, even now, it's a big thing.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
What about you, Joe?
Well, I've had several, and some of them are still in Tennessee, and I talk to them a lot. It was just a family I met when I first started going to Seymour First Baptist Church. This lady, Miss Tanya, as we called her, was the very first lady I met when I walked in the door of that church. She seemed to be the very first lady everybody met when they walked into the door of that church. And I think you guys probably all know someone like that, just everybody's grandma type of person or everybody's mom type of person. And her husband, Rick, ended up being like my wife's adopted parents while we were in Tennessee for 4 years. And we still talk to him to this day. We love him to death. And very, very spiritual, but just very like loving, caring parents for us. And we can go to them with anything. They can probably recite the entire Bible to you. And then there's another couple we met out there, David and Kathy Campbell, who I still communicate with, even though we've been in California for 7 years. And I can lean on them. I can call them up if I have questions, concerns, anything like that. They really go out of their way to help us and talk to us and just, pray with us, whatever we need. So I have, distance. They're in Tennessee, so I don't get to talk to them all the time. But in California, I have two. My buddy Al Pooley, who's an older man. He actually wrote all of that parenting stuff I teach, the Fatherhood is Sacred, Motherhood is Sacred classes. He wrote all of those. He's a really good, close friend of mine. And then my buddy Mark Pullen, who's a pastor at a church over here, and we're co-workers. And he's like my daily spiritual minister, or mentor. So when I'm frustrated or I'm upset with something, I can call him, and he's really good at pointing me to where in the Bible I need to be for what I'm going through. And just that guy I can lean on, and bounce ideas off of. And hey, what do you think about this? Hey, what do you think about that? For even for stuff I want to do with youth. And he's one of those guys that he's always 100% happy. Like even when he's not happy, he's happy, and he's in love with the Lord. And I try to model a lot of stuff what I do after him, just because I'd love to be like that. Be that guy who just every day is a blessing. Every day, the sun is out and you get out of bed, your feet hit the ground. He's one of those guys who just loves everything. And I lean on him a lot because I'm still growing. Even though I do ministry and stuff, I really only consider myself a true Christian for the last 11 years, maybe 11, 12 years. And he's the guy who I just lean on like crazy. And he's a great mentor because he calls me out too. If I'm being spiritually immature about something, he will let me know. and I appreciate that. He loves me enough to praise me when I do good, and he loves me enough to tell me, like, hey, you're not doing so hot there, buddy. So I have a bunch, and I lean on them times. So it helps. It definitely helps.
Awesome.
Oh.
Yeah, I've got mentors just like that. And my mentors, I've actually got one was my youth minister growing up, and he's one that if I've got, because in ministry you have rocky times, and like even though you work for peace and you work for unity in church and in staff, there are moments when things get rocky. And for me, he's one of the guys that I reach out to when things are getting rocky, and just go, hey, what do I do here? I want to keep the peace. I want to keep, because that was one thing he was always really good at. And so I'll call him up, call him Eek. It was actually Eric Miller, but we always called him Eek. And so I'm like, hey, Eek, what's up, man? I've got this going on, or I'm struggling with this. And he'll call me up every once in a while, just check on me. And what's really funny is, like, it's always been a mentorship type of thing, but it's starting to turn to almost like a walking alongside friendship in ministry mindset, where kind of like he's passing the buck on to me to, hey, I'm going to ask your advice now on stuff. And hey, what do you think about this or that? Like, it's a really cool situation to be in. And to me, it kind of has let me know, hey, as I'm growing up, my mentor sees that I'm growing, and he's seeing, hey, Joey's got this. Now I'm going to pass on to him and let him keep going. And to me, that's a sign of a good mentor, of someone that, and for me, I try to be like this and want to be like this. I don't want the people that I mentor to just be as strong as a Christian as I am. I want them to be stronger in their faith and to do more great things for Christ than I've ever done. And I sit there, and that's what I see this youth minister doing for me now. And so that's what I'm hoping to be for somebody else. And then the other one is, I've got a minister who, he came in my last 2.5 years when I was in Florida, and he was a senior minister down there. Dale Wise, and he was wise, like really wise man. And one thing I learned from him was, he, like, when he comes in and into a church, he knows what's right and he knows what's wrong, and he stands up if something isn't going the way it should, even if he's standing up to elders. But he always does it in a way that edifies God and still keeps unity among everybody that's in the conversation. Like, he's definitely a peacekeeper, and that is something I have not always been. So, like, I've been taking a lot of advice from him. And the thing that encouraged me was when he came in, the elders talked to him, and they said, if you're going to work here, we're wanting someone to mentor Joey to be the next senior minister. So will you do that? And he said, I will only take the job if you promise me that you'll make Joey the next senior minister and I get to mentor him. And he told me that and said, I want to mentor you, and that's what I'm doing. And, like, he would check on me. He still calls and checks on me. About once a month, he'll call me and say, hey, well, how's it going? What's going on there? How's your kids doing? How are you treating your wife? Like, just very, like, making sure I am staying godly. And like you said, Joe, he'll call me on my crap if I'm not doing the right thing. Like the other day, we were talking, and I had said, yeah, I'm getting a little nervous about this, or I'm starting to worry about this or that. And he said, well, that doesn't sound like a Christian. And I said, well, that's true. And so I was like, okay, I got to rethink this. And he reminds me, the way he mentors me and kind of came in and approached that way, actually reminds me of a biblical mentor. he reminds me a lot of Elisha and Elijah. Elisha was the one that was mentored, and then Elijah was the one that did the mentoring. And I know we all talked about this a little bit, and we've looked into it. And I know, Andy, you got some cool stuff about your thoughts on Elijah and Elisha.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one thing that always stood out to me about Elijah and Elisha was Elijah never, because a lot of times in situations like Joey, what you were talking about, if you're working in a church under a pastor, a lot of times that pastor will try to hold the other people back, because of, they're threatened or whatever. But Elijah never did that for Elisha. And I think that was, and I mean, and people talk about Elijah, and because Elijah did some great things. When he was on Mount Carmel, with the standoff with the prophets of Baal, he did some really, God did some really great things through him. But I think we get caught up with Elijah, but Elisha did some really great things too. But we can talk about that, another time. But it was just, and the thing that always stood out to me was that Elijah never tried to hold Elisha back. He's like, hey, it's not gonna be easy, but come on, we're gonna do this. And Elisha was with him every step of the way.
Yeah. Well, and the crazy thing is, like, I'm sorry, I get all these guys, like these two of the guys, I get mixed up all the time. Elijah was, like, when he was up on, like, after he did the battle against Baal, or the battle against the prophets of Baal, he went up and ran away, went to the mountains, and, like, he just did this amazing thing, and he's like, God, kill me now. I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it. And God's like, no, this is what you're going to do. I'm going to send someone for you to train up. I'm going to send help. And in 1 Kings 19, he actually tells him, you're going to anoint this guy, Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat from Abel, Mahola, to succeed you as prophet. And he says, and Elisha will put to death any who escape the sword of Jehu. And he's like, basically, Elisha and Jehu are going to get rid of all these prophets and like all these people that have haunted you and, like, made your life miserable. They're going to do the job you couldn't do, basically. Like, they're going to get rid of all of them. You've spoke against them, but they're going to do what you've wanted to do.
Right.
And Elijah knew that, and he still followed through. And I will say, like I said, for us and for everyone out there, it's important to have a mentor, but you're also a mentee. Is that right? You're to be the mentor. All right. And it's important to know that aspect. To know that as the mentor, you're training someone else up to be something greater. That you're wanting them to do more than you've ever done. You're wanting them to be greater than you've ever been. But I also think in the story of Elijah and Elisha, the calling of Elisha cracks me up, because Elijah comes in, takes his, like, cloak off, or his coat, comes up to Elisha and just throws it over his shoulders, and then starts to walk off. Like, okay, you're the next guy. Boom. And Elisha, it says he left his oxen, because he was out, like, plowing the ground. Like, he was out working. So he leaves his oxen runs after Elijah, and says, "Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, and then I will come with you." So like the guy put his coat around him, and he goes, "Nope, I know who you are. I want to follow you. I want to be underneath your tutelage. Let me just say goodbye to everybody, and I'm gone." And Elisha was rich. Like he had like a ton of cattle. It says 12 yoke of oxen. Like that's like having a couple Benzes. All right, this guy is rich, and the craziest part was he was so excited to be under the tutelage of Elijah that he killed the oxen, took all of his equipment, burned it, cooked all the meat, and then had a big party with all of his neighbors. Gave all of them the meat after they cooked it. Then he left, and he started following Elijah.
Mm-hmm.
And like today, an equivalent of that would be like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to follow this person, so I'm going to sell my whole business to just follow under the tutelage of this one person. And after I sell my business, I'm going to throw a party with the money that I sold my business with, like to celebrate that I'm following this person. And to me, that I don't know that I would sell everything to follow any of my mentors, but I will be honest, like my mentors, I trust enough and look up to that if they said, "Hey, we've been praying about it and we think this is a good idea for you. You should probably sell your house because I think this is where God's calling you." I would probably sell my house. Mainly because I know they've prayed, like, because I know them and I know their hearts. And I know they're not coming at me and trying to sucker me into something.
Yeah. Well, and if we look in 2 Kings, if we look at, I think we see Elisha's dedication to Elijah, because this is right at the end of Elijah's life. And so they're in Gilgal, and Elijah says, "Elisha, stay here. The Lord's calling me to Bethel." And Elisha's like, "I'm not going anywhere. I'm going with you. You can't get rid of me." And so he says, "Okay." So they leave. And so they're leaving Bethel, and Elijah says, "Stay here. The Lord's calling me to Jericho." And Elisha said, "I'm not staying. I'm going." Of course, I'm paraphrasing,
Yeah.
And so then finally Elijah says, "Okay, so the Lord's calling me to the Jordan, and you stay here." And Elisha said, "I'm not going anywhere." So they travel together, and Elijah rolls up his cloak, and he slaps the river with it, and it parts. Okay, so they cross, and Elijah says to Elisha, "What else? What is the one last thing that I can do for you before I leave?" And Elisha says, "Give me a double portion of your spirit." And I'm just thinking, like, okay, so Elijah, who had, was indwelt with enough of God's spirit where he essentially had to challenge hundreds of prophets of Baal to an altar off. I mean, I don't, challenge, to basically called out their God.
Yeah.
And, and I don't know, a sacrifice, whatever. But anyway, and so I'm just thinking, like, and if you think about it, it's like, you want a double portion of that? And Elijah even says, he's like, "I don't think you really know what you're asking." But he says, "If you're here when I leave, you'll get it. If you're not, you won't." And so then they keep walking, and then that's where a chariot of fire comes down and takes Elijah. And of course he was there, and so he was given the double portion of the spirit of Elijah's spirit. And Elijah leaves his cloak, and I think it's telling. It's the thing that Elijah used to call Elisha to follow him, and then he leaves it for him. And so Elisha takes it and rolls it up, smacks the river with it, and it parts. And he walks back, and he does great things for the kingdom. I think it's very telling of Elisha that he wasn't going to leave. I mean, because it would have been very easy for him to be like, okay, I'll wait here. You'll come back and get me.
Mm-hmm.
But he wouldn't have. And Elisha was like, I'm not going anywhere. I've still got a lot to learn.
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah, so.
Well, and that double portion thing, like when he asked for a double portion of the Spirit, part of that is old Jewish law, like the law back then was if you're asking for a double portion, that was what you gave the inheritance to the oldest son.
Right.
So he's basically asking to be the chief prophet of Israel.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think, like, for Elijah, he's sitting there going, if you want this, like, if you really want to be the chief prophet, where they try to kill you and nobody likes you and everybody yells at you, if you want that, you could have it, but know what you're getting into.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think you know what you're asking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing about that story that I like too is his passion, because a piece of that puzzle was each time they'd stop, Elijah would also tell Elisha, I'm leaving today. And then even at one of the places they stopped, the other men said, hey, he's leaving, right? Like, he's leaving us. Like, everyone knew this. He's about to depart. They don't know how, but they know he's departing in some way or fashion. And his response every single time was, yes, I know, so be quiet.
Right.
Like,
I know he's leaving. I still got a lot to learn. Hush.
Yeah. Let's keep moving. I want to hear more. Keep talking to me about this other stuff. Let's not get caught up on you leaving. And I think that's the biggest thing is when you have a mentor, listen. I know I've said that a lot, but soak it in. Because I'll be honest, like, even looking back, I had some really great moments with Doc, but I sit there and go, how many times that I would, like, say, well, I could go over there and sit with Doc at lunch and, like, dive into more discussion, or I could go over and flirt with this girl over here. I'm gonna go flirt with this girl over here. Like, I didn't take advantage of the mentorship aspect as I should have. And I will tell you, the girl I flirted with in college, none of them I married, because the only girl that I, like, struggled to flirt with was the girl I ended up marrying from college.
Did y'all know each other at Johnson?
We did. We played volleyball, and she spiked the ball in my face.
Okay.
Only person ever to spike the ball in my face.
Okay.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah, speaking of having lunch with Doc, and one day I was in my office, and I got an email from Doc, and he checked in, and he said, heard you were still in town. He said, I just want to get together. And so him and the Fox met me, for lunch, and bought me lunch one day. Just wanted to check in and see how things were going. And that's just that mentorship of, checking in and always, being there.
Yeah.
And that always meant a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I want to kind of flip things. We've been talking about the mentors and people that have mentored us, but as men, as three of us being godly men and parents, like, we're fathers, so we are automatically mentors. Whether you like it or not, you are a mentor to your kid. Don't be a crappy one. Dude, I'm just gonna be blunt about it, all right? But
Right.
take a lot of the stuff you learn from other mentors, from Elijah, Elisha, and start to apply that to your life as a mentor. Like, be willing to put the time into somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just brush them off. Because like I wonder in my mind what Elijah, like when he went and just put the coat on Elisha, if it was just like, all right, putting the coat on him, walking off, he's taking over now. Like, it almost seemed like he was almost taken aback when Elisha was like, yeah, no, I'm following you. I'm coming with you. And Elijah said, when he does that, Elijah's like, okay, come on, let's go. Being willing to say, okay, let's go. I'm going to bring you into my life. You're going to see it all, because I want you to see what living a godly life looks like. The biggest thing of that, though, is if you're going to be a mentor, make sure you are living a godly life. Like, you don't have to be perfect, but even in your imperfection, be able to show, hey, look, I messed up. I need to ask God for forgiveness. I need to make this right. I need to.
Yeah.
You have to be, and a lot of times we think as mentor, like sometimes when you're trying to mentor, and I've talked to other parents about this before, well, I want to hide my past from my kids because I don't want them to know how bad of a person I was in the past. No, I want my kids to know what I did in the past so that they, one, know that was the stupidest thing ever, and two, so that they can go, oh, but Dad came out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Dad admits that he was wrong. So Dad's not perfect, and he still leaned on God through this, and God got him through it. What are your guys' thoughts on being a mentor?
I think there's not enough people that are willing to mentor, because, I mean, I think if you look at the three biggest examples of that we have in Scripture, you have Elijah and Elisha, and they did life together. Like, they were together all the time. You have Jesus and the 12 disciples. They did life together. They were together all the time. Then Paul and Timothy. They did life together. They were together all the time. And there's so much, and especially in today, in our culture, we're so busy. We don't think that we have enough time to pour into somebody else's life. And then the other side of it is we don't want other people to see our imperfections.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think social media is a big part of that because, and I think girls are more guilty of this than guys. But like, you see girls, especially younger girls, like, they'll take 15 selfies just to find that one perfect picture to put on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever they're using these days. And then filters to hide their imperfections, and you always see everybody's best on social media, but when you're living life with somebody, you don't always see their best. You see their worst, and people don't want people to see behind the curtain, and so I would encourage anybody who hears this. You have to let people see your mess. Because if you don't let people see your mess, you're setting unrealistic expectations of what a Christian looks like.
Yeah.
You gotta. If you look at Paul and his letters, he wrote. Not only did he let people see his mess, he wrote about it. He wrote, the things that he struggled with. We gotta let people in and see behind the curtain and know that being a Christian is not easy. It's not always great. Most of the time, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all sunshine and roses. It's tough. You're in the muck, you're in the grime. You have to be able, and sometimes you have to bring somebody in there with you to walk through it, and so they know that when they struggle, it's okay. It doesn't mean that my faith isn't real. It doesn't mean that God's left me. This happens.
Yeah. And I think another thing too about mentorship is when you start as dads, we're mentors no matter what. We have no choice. We are mentors from the day, the kid came into our life. Even as uncles or older cousins, doesn't matter if there's people younger than us in our lives, we're going to be mentoring them in some way, shape, or form. We might not know it, but we are. We'll be influencing them. But I think one thing though, when you really get into mentoring, you have to make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. You're not doing it because you want adulation, you want people looking up to you and, oh, hey, look how cool I am. I have all these people who think I'm the coolest person in the world. Because some people might look at mentorship like that, like, hey, look at me, I'm influencing all these people, and they take it as a very ego thing. But and that builds on what Andy said. Like, we have to make sure that when we're mentoring, we're showing people that we're not perfect. We try. We're trying our darndest to be the best person we can be, but we are going to fail eventually, somehow, some way. And it's just, how do we pick ourselves up after we fail? And how do we learn from our failures, and we show people we don't give up? So, a big part of that mentorship is humbling ourselves and being honest with ourselves and with other people about who we are. And also, that we're doing it for the other person. We're not doing it for us. I'm not a mentor because, oh, hey, I like having a bunch of teenagers that like listening to me. I know they don't like listening to me, but still, that's youth ministry. But you know what I mean? It's we got to make sure our heart's right with the mentorship, and it's not, we're not showing that social media everything's perfect picture of our lives. But we're doing our best not to be a mess, but we're not hiding our mistakes. We're learning from them and educating other people about them. Yeah. So that's, so for me, that's a big part of mentorship too, to add on to what you guys said, and it's humbling. And sometimes, you got to learn from the kids or the people you're mentoring. Sometimes they come to you with a nugget and you're like, oh, wow, I'm going to steal that. So yeah, just when you get into it, you got to make sure your heart's in the right place.
Oh yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, talking about your heart's in the right place, and kind of to wrap things up on the show, I did a funeral last week, and at the funeral, I sat and listened to the family tell stories, but also listened to them talk with each other. And I heard everyone talking about this man as a man of integrity, but then also heard all of their lives, what's going on in their lives, what they've done, what they do. And these were all men and women, and even teenage men and women of integrity, that they've taken what he taught and they're like, well, this is how I'm applying it to my life. He helped me through this, and I'm now living out this way because of what he taught me. And for me, I hear that, and that's what I want people to take away when I'm gone. Mm-hmm. Is not the aspect of, oh, Joey grew all these men and women of integrity, but for someone to sit there and go, if they're at my funeral, and be able to say, oh man, that's a whole family of men and women who are full of integrity. Oh, that whole family follows God. Like for me, if people are able to say that at my funeral by how the people are acting at my funeral, then I want to be like, okay, awesome. Mm-hmm. That's what I want. I want to raise up Christian men and women that have a strong faith, and that's what it's all about. Like Joe said, doing it for the right reasons. And we want to encourage you guys again, if there's anything you want to talk about, please hit us up on our social media stuff. And just let us know. We want to talk with you. If you have prayer requests, we'd love to pray with you. And if you've got questions, because one of the big things that we're focusing on now is we're still going to do some sports stuff every once in a while, but we're really wanting to focus more on the spiritual aspect.
Mhm.
So if you have any questions, let us know. We'd love to take time to talk about it. And if you want to talk with us personally, we'd love to talk with you also. So please just hit us up. And to close us out tonight, Joe, you want to pray for us?
Yep. Got
Hey,
it.
before you do that, last word of wisdom. Every believer, and I think if you read through, especially the New Testament, this is pretty evident. Every believer needs a Paul, a Timothy, and a Barnabas. And so, essentially, everybody needs to be mentoring somebody. Everybody needs to be mentored by somebody, and everybody needs somebody to walk along with them. Because Paul mentored Timothy, and so, of course, Timothy was mentored by Paul, and then Barnabas was there to walk with Paul. And so we need all three of those at all times. And, and that person that walks with us a lot of times is our source of strength. We're there to help us as we walk, as we mentor somebody, and as we're mentored by somebody. So all three of those are important. And if you don't have anybody in your life that you're mentoring, find somebody. Find somebody younger. Go to church. Go upstairs in the youth room and say, I want to help, because kids need somebody. And if you're not being mentored by anybody, go find the gray-haired people and buy one of them lunch. Because the churches I've been in, there are a lot of people that are, senior adults or getting up there in age that would love to have somebody just pick their brain and pull out that wisdom that they've got through the years.
Oh yeah. All right. So I'll go ahead and pray. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, guys. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and the opportunity we've had to come together and just discuss mentorship and discuss the wonderful man Doc Reese and what he meant to our lives. Lord, just we pray for everyone out there who may be listening to this, that they can find that person to mentor them. They can find somebody to mentor. They have that person who can walk with them. The Paul, the Timothy, the Barnabas, as Andy talked about. Lord, we just pray for this country. We pray for, for healing and everybody's health. And we just pray for all the kids who we work with, and that we can be great mentors to them so they can be great mentors to someone else. In your name we pray. Amen.